My father and I didn't get along. My father and I had a huge fight when I was 15 years old, and we didn't speak for 10 years. And when I say didn't speak, Ben, I mean did not speak. Not like, hi, Dad, and that's it. I didn't say a word to him. And I graduated from high school, and I was able to then go to college on the East Coast and law school in the Midwest. So basically, I had avoided my dad for almost 10 years. Now my mom and my dad were still married in the house. So when I would come home for vacation, for summers, I would just make sure I'm not around when he was not around. And that was pretty easy because my dad worked long hours. He had a cafe. So now fast forward, I'm 25 years old. I've now graduated from law school. I have this big job with a big law firm making a boatload of money. I'm 25 years old, and I should be living large. But Ben, I can't sleep. And I know it has something to do with my dad. Not that I ever thought we'd be buddies, but I called my secretary and I said, cancel all my appointments. I'm flying to LA, and I'll be back in a couple of days. I didn't tell my parents I was coming because I didn't want my father to prepare for this summit. So I get to the airport, get a cab to the restaurant. I got in at 1:30. We closed at 2:30. And I came there with these two big bags. My dad hadn't talked to me in 10 years. He sees me. He's, of course, surprised. And he said, should I put your bags in the back, Larry? I said, no, Dad. I'm only going to be here for 5 or 10 minutes. I want to tell you something. He said, okay, wait till we close. I sat there for an hour. And I said to myself, Larry, don't tee off on this son of a bitch. Just give him the highlights. Don't just wail into him. And so my dad sat down, and I wailed into him for almost 20 minutes. You see how I can go. And I talked for 20 minutes about every spanking, every whipping, everything he ever said to me, everything he'd ever done to me that pissed me off. And I gave him everything. And I was exhausted. I'd run out of ammo. My dad goes, is that it? You didn't speak to me for 10 years because of that? And I went, yeah. And my father said, let me tell you about my father. And Ben, for the first time, I saw my father cry. I did not think the man had the ability to summon tears. I didn't think he could do that. I knew my father was an only child. I knew we had no relatives on his side because we never got any gifts for Christmas. Aside from that, I knew nothing about my father. I met his mother once when I went to the South, but I knew nothing about my dad. And didn't care. I didn't like him. My brothers didn't like him either. So it wasn't like I was curious about him. So he said, let me tell you about my father. When we're sitting in these two stools in my dad's cafe. He said, your last name Elder? I said, yeah. He said, that's not the name of my father. I said, what? What is your father's name? He said, I have no idea. You never met your father? No. Who is Elder? He was in my life the longest. My mother had a series of boyfriends, each one more irresponsible than the other one. Elder was a drunk, seldom worked, and when he did, he'd take home the money, give it to my mother so that she would keep it so he wouldn't drink it away, and then come Wednesday or Thursday, he'd want it. If she didn't give it to him, he kicked the crap out of her. If ever I tried to do anything, he kicked the crap out of me. And he was in my life, my dad said, the longest. How long was the longest? He said 4 years. I said, what after that? Series of boyfriends. I'm now 13 years old, my dad said. I came home from school, 8th grade, and I was making too much noise for my mom's then boyfriend. My mom sided with the boyfriend when he and I were fighting, and she threw me out of the house, age 13, never to return. Athens, Georgia, Jim Crow South, at the beginning of the Great Depression. I defy you to find somebody with a hand dealt like that. My father goes down the road, Ben, he picks up trash, does anything he can do. Ultimately, he becomes a Pullman porter for the trains. They were the largest private employer of blacks in those days. And so he was able to travel all around the country, which was eye-opening for a little black boy from the South. And he came to California one time on a run. And it was sunny, and people seemed to be less racist. He could walk into a restaurant and get served. And my dad said to my mom, maybe someday I'll relocate to LA. Pearl Harbor, my dad joined the Marines. He was the first black Marines. They were called the Montford Point Marines. People don't know about them, but they were every bit as influential as were the Tuskegee Airmen that everybody knows about. There were 20,000 Montford Point Marines from 1942 to 1949, and Congress gave them a Congressional Gold Medal a few years ago. My dad got his posthumously. Anyway, he was stationed in Guam, became a staff sergeant, was in charge of the cooking facilities. He can cook anything. He could look at a cake and tell you what was in it. So he goes to Chattanooga, where he had met and married my mom, and he knocks on doors, all these restaurants, to get a job as a cook. And they told him, we don't hire, to his face. He goes to an unemployment office. Lady says, you went to the wrong door. He goes to the hall. He sees colored only, goes through that door to the very same lady who sent him out. He came home to my mom and said, this is BS. I'm going to LA. I'm going to get me a job as a cook, and I'll send for you. Comes out to LA, walks around for 2 or 3 days. I'm sorry, you have no references. And my dad, of course, told them that he was a World War II vet. He cooked for the service. I'm sorry, you have no references. My dad even offered to work for free. Just give me a written reference. They wouldn't even do that. So they treated him the same way in LA as they did in Chattanooga. They were just a little more polite about it. He went to an unemployment office, one door, sat there in a chair for a day and a half. Lady calls him up. I have a job, don't know if you're going to want it. My dad says, I'm sure I'm going to want it. What is it? And she says, cleaning toilets with a company called Nabisco Brand Bread. My dad did that for 10 years, took a second job cleaning toilets at another bread company called Barbara Ann Bread, cooked for a family in Pacific Palisades on the weekends, and went to night school 2 or 3 nights a week to get his GED. The man never slept, Ben. An hour here, 2 hours here. You do that week after week, month after month, year after year, and you come home with a household full of 3 rambunctious boys and see what kind of mood you're in. The man was tired. And so we talked for 8 hours. I asked him everything I could ask him. He asked me about my life. The man got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and I got smaller and smaller and smaller. By the end of the 8 hours, I'm crying. And I said, Dad, I am so sorry. And he said, Larry, don't be. Just follow the advice I've always given you and your brothers. Hard work wins. You get out of life what you put into it. Larry, you cannot control the outcome, but damn it, you are 100% in control of the effort. And before you moan and whine about what somebody did to you, go to the nearest mirror, look at it, and say to yourself, what could I have done to change the outcome? And finally, he said this, no matter how good you are, how hard you work, how moral you are, sooner or later, bad things are going to happen to you. How you deal with those bad things will tell your mom and me whether or not we raised a man.